So our session will compose of two main elements. The first one is obviously first things first, and it will be just technical information on EOSC Academy and its update, including online sessions and courses available, and then introduction to course 3. And then we will move forward to our main part and most important part of the session, which will be introduction to EOSC use cases, and then presentation of 3 use cases that will be introduced by Stefan later on. And the last part will be the Q&A session, and that's why we would like to ask you to keep your questions until the end. We will let the guest speakers present their presentations and their use cases, and at the end we will ask the questions to all of them. So now a few words about EOSC Academy as well as available courses. We have already launched 4 courses. We started from explaining the EOSC Federation, applying the EOSC Federation handbook, obviously minimum requirements for a project charter, and the one that is currently starting, which is use cases for the EOSC Federation. Obviously, we have much more in our portfolio. Just to mention one, which will start still by the end, still before summer break, which is the EOSC AAI Explained. Obviously, you are all very welcome to join these courses, to see materials that are available there. They are all obviously open access for you. You can watch the videos from the previous online sessions. You can use and reuse materials that are there. So you are very welcome to join those courses. But also the upcoming sessions. So still before the summer break, we would like to welcome you and invite you to participate in the session, the EOSC AAI Explained, which is part of course number 7. This online session will take place on the 30th of June in the morning. And then we will let you have some summer rest, and afterwards we will see you again in September with course number 4, which is Ask Me Anything session, requirements for the project charter. And this session is basically addressed to those who are interested in developing project charter, and they will be especially the grantees of cascading grants, but not only, but also the future notes. If you have questions while developing the project charter, this session is for you. And then you have to basically put your in calendar the date, the 1st of September. The registration is not open yet. It will be open closer to date. And now I would like to hand over to Stefan Reichmann, who will introduce the course number 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia, and a very warm welcome to everybody. It's great to see such a great turnout of people who are interested in this topic. Before I introduce our speakers and briefly walk you through the agenda for this online session, we thought that I would briefly walk you through the course itself and to give you a roundabout tour of what you can expect from an EOSC Academy course, basically. So with the EOSC Federation taking shape, there is an increasing number of scientific use cases coming out of the nodes, which are designed basically to demonstrate how the capabilities of the EOSC Federation can actually be deployed to good scientific use in response, hopefully, to real-world problems or real-world scientific problems. And in that spirit, the EOSC Gravity project, of which this EOSC Academy initiative is an important part, has funded via its cascading calls a number of projects designed to develop scientific use cases and making use of the capabilities and services of the EOSC Federation. This course has been designed mostly with these projects in mind, in the sense that it is designed to highlight the challenges, the pitfalls, but also emerging solutions and lessons learned in these use cases, in developing the scientific use cases via the Federation and in making use of the EOSC Federation. And in that sense, to make sure that these cascading projects, but also others wanting to deploy scientific use cases via the Federation, have a good and readily available body of knowledge. So the focus today will, of course, be on these successful use cases. Next slide, please. So at present, as you can see, the course has 3 modules. The first, in which you are participating today, incidentally, is designed as a roundabout introduction to scientific use cases using federated capabilities. And as you can see, it is in the format of an online session with presentations. We're going to hear 4, each highlighting the scientific merit of one or more scientific applications of the EOSC Federation. Module 2, which is also already available via the EOSC Academy website, offers a more in-depth engagement with some of these use cases, with a few selected use cases that are already available via the notes. And it does this by way of, well, 2 mediums, 2 formats, essentially via short videos that you can watch directly on the website. But also each of these use cases comes with an accompanying text. Module 3 is perhaps a bit more complicated. It's presently under construction, so you can find it on the website, but there's not much materials there at present, in the sense that the module is designed to summarize in a more abstract sense the lessons learned from deploying these use cases in such a way that this might be useful going forward in the development of new and novel scientific use cases using the Federation. Next slide, please. Then, before I hand over to our speakers, or to our first speaker, more to the point, a few words on the agenda for today are in order. We shall start with a general introduction to EOSC use cases, which will be delivered by our colleague Diego Scardacci from the EGI Foundation. Diego is leading multiple EOSC-related projects, EOSC Beyond, EOSC Data Commons, now I believe EOSC Mesh, which we'll talk about the EOSC Federation architecture. Many thanks for being here. Then we have the first use case for today, which will be presented by Beatriz Serrano Solano from the Eurobioimaging ERIC. She will speak to a scientific use case coming out of Galaxy, and this will revolve around using Galaxy for imaging data workflows. So a very warm welcome as well. Then we have a use case coming out of CERN, which will be presented by Tibor Shimko, who is the Deputy Node Coordinator. He will be speaking to how the RIANA pipelines can be federated using the EOSC Federation. Last but not least, we have our colleague Sarah Pittonet-Kayarin from Trust IT, who represents the EOSC node Digital Twin of the Ocean. And she will be speaking to the biological sequestration of carbon in the ocean. Before I hand over, a final note on our itinerary for today. As you can see, the final part of this online session is a moderated Q&A session. That being the case, we kindly ask that you please save any and all questions that you have until after the presentations. So basically, we are trying to have a very steady flow of presentations and a very smooth transition between the 4 contributions. And so we kindly ask that you please refrain from asking questions in between. There will be lots of time actually afterwards. And you may speak up if you have questions. You may also use the chat, which will be moderated by Natalia and myself, and we will pass on your questions to the speakers. So, without further ado, I would hand over to Diego, our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Let me share my slide. can you please confirm me and see the slide in full screen mode?
Yes.
Yes, now we do. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Diego Scadaci, Technical Associate Team Lead at the EGI Foundation. As Stefan mentioned, I'm leading a bunch of EOSC projects. In this presentation, I'll try to answer to a very simple question. What is a use case for the EOSC Federation? That I believe is not so obvious as it seems. So let's see together in this presentation of the way that I adopted to define what a use case for EOSC is. Firstly, very important to understand what is an EOSC use cases, we need to understand what are the EOSC and the EOSC Federation. Then I will go specifically on the definition of the EOSC use cases, and then I'll try to list a set of, would say, requirements that a EOSC use case should respect, what a EOSC use case should demonstrate to be called exactly a EOSC use case. So let's start from what are EOSC and EOSC Federation. Many times very likely you have the EOSC defined as the web of data related services, so the data space for research. But what does this definition mean exactly? The idea is that the EOSC is expected to enable new ways of making science. And this will be done facilitating the discovery, access, use, and combination of resources coming from different research initiatives, different research infrastructures, different thematic services, and so on. When I talk of resources, I talk of generally of everything that is useful for the sciences. That can be services, data set, computer storage resources, publication, whatever. So EOSC is something that allow us to make science in a different, better way, facilitating the combination of resources that are coming from adjacent communities. Then there is this other term, the EOSC Federation. At the end, the EOSC Federation is simply the framework that we have selected to implement this concept of EOSC. I copied in the slide the EOSC Federation definition from the handbook, where it is introduced a very other important concept, the concept of EOSC node. Because the federation in handbook is defined as a network of autonomous nodes, the EOSC nodes, that interact with each other, to work together, to collaborate, to deliver additional capability to users. So something more with respect is already available today. And the idea is this federation will provide researchers with all the digital resources that are needed to conduct researches within and across disciplines and borders according to fair principle for data and open science in a secure environment. Very important, driven by scientific communities. So an environment that is created according to the needs of the communities. So this is the definition of EOSC and EOSC Federation. Then, leveraging this definition, what is an EOSC use case? A EOSC use case, at the end, is a scientific or research support workflow or process or practice that is very important, enabled or enhanced through the EOSC Federation, for example, by combining and consuming resources from multiple sources, from multiple EOSC nodes, where these EOSC nodes are the fundamental element of the EOSC Federation. So this is a point that I want to stress. So EOSC use case is not something that I can already do, I was already able to do without EOSC, but something that can benefit from the EOSC, from the EOSC Federation, so can be enabled or enhanced to the EOSC Federation. This is a very critical point. And an EOSC use case is expected to enable, facilitate the use of services in dataset from multiple nodes and the combination and consumption of resources to EOSC interoperable interfaces. What does mean that? At the end, without EOSC, two communities can collaborate, can define a way to connect their services to bespoke solution, and they can already combine the resources. EOSC will create this standard interfaces, these interoperability interfaces, part of the interoperability framework that will partially automate this process. So make this interaction between communities, this combination of resources, easier to achieve and repeatable. And the EOSC use case should demonstrate the clear added value from the EOSC Federation beyond what could be achieved using a single local infrastructure alone. So, with a use case, I should demonstrate that with EOSC, I can do something more with respect to what I did in the past. What a EOSC use case should demonstrate? A EOSC use case, first of all, should demonstrate how the federation-wide interoperability and resource sharing can support end-user activities that cannot be effectively realized to a single node alone. This means that we can combine resources from multiple nodes, leveraging the EOSC interoperability framework and making repeatable what would require, without EOSC, a lot of manual intervention, manual work. So, leveraging EOSC to easily connect resources, services, datasets, and so on, coming from different initiatives. And why the EOSC use cases becomes important? Because they should demonstrate the value of the EOSC Federation to the researchers. Very important, should validate this federation interoperability mechanism defined in the EOSC interoperability framework, should help to identify what is needed in the federation, because to support a EOSC use case, we may need to add new federating capability in the federation, and according to this, they can drive the evolution of the EOSC services and policies, and obviously to showcase the scientific outcomes enabled by EOSC. So when you need to identify a EOSC use case, you should ask yourself if this use case is able to demonstrate one or more of the points listed in this slide. First of all, it allows to discover resources across multiple nodes, for example, allow to access distributed dataset and services, again, hosted by multiple nodes, can leverage EOSC Federation interoperability mechanism to implement some step of the use cases, can demonstrate cross-node scientific workflow, so a workflow that is partially executed in one of the EOSC nodes and partially on other EOSC nodes, can showcase the added value for researchers with respect to what we have today, can showcase the benefit of EOSC compared to isolated infrastructure. And finally, showcase how to support scientific communities to distributed EOSC resources. So when you are defining your EOSC use cases as part of your project, you can check this list and trying to understand if this use case effectively is able to demonstrate one or more of these bullets. That's all for this introduction. I tried to identify a practical way to understand when a use case can be considered a use cases, and you can try to apply in your activity. Now, my presentation will be followed up by the presentation from Beatrice, Sarah, and Tibor that will showcase real use cases and how this theoretical concept that I just introduced can be translated in concrete ways to support the researchers in EOSC. That's all from my side.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Diego. This has been most illuminating. In keeping with the provisions that we made just before the presentation, I would now ask the next presenter, which is Beatrice, to take over the screen, please.
Yes, I hope that you can see and you can hear me well. It's everything okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session today. I'm very happy to be here and also share this use case with you. So this is about image analysis workflows in Galaxy, and I am coming from the Uruguay Imaging research infrastructure. So we are here, different communities. I am representing the microscopy one, but we also have researchers from astronomy and environmental science represented by EPFL and LifeWatch Eric. And so basically this is a group of 3 different communities. We have images all in our research, and we just thought that maybe we can reuse the methods from one discipline to another. This is, of course, not an easy task. So we have plenty, before starting any of this, we have plenty of methods for each one of the disciplines. Methods are fragmented. It's quite difficult to see what the others are doing, where the tools are, the data, and so on. And we also speak different languages. So each one of us are speaking our specific domain. So I speak about cells. My colleague speaks about stars and galaxies, trees, rivers, and so on. So it's a bit difficult sometimes to have this communication. And so in the end, the consequence of all of this is that reusing this method is quite complicated. So that's where we try to write a project that it's called Oscars Fiesta. So that was funded under the Oscars Cascading Grants on the first open call that they launched more than 1 year ago, I think. And we thought we could use these different EOS services. We've been working in EOS projects before for our own domains. We wanted to just be able to work together into one single project in which we can have different image analysis workflows that don't care about the input data. So whatever it's a cell, a star, or something else, we just want to use the same image analysis pipeline. And again, this is not trivial. So we needed to have some fair enabling resources. So we wanted to be able to find tools to access them, also the data, to make them interoperable, because they have been working for different communities, but never together. And that was the tricky part, so that in the end, we do something reusable. So you see a bunch of fair enabling resources there. The green dots indicate that they are listed in the EOS EU node as well, but they are domain specific. Sometimes they are packaging, sometimes they are about fair of data, sometimes they are about AI models. So it's a bit very broad landscape what we are trying to use here. And the agreement that we came to was that we want to use Galaxy as the platform to run this workflow, because we were all having uses already on the different areas. So we just thought it is the interoperability layer in which we all can converge, have our tools in there, and then combine them into a single workflow that would be doing the analysis of a particular image. A bit for free as part of this ecosystem comes the workflow hub. So whenever one develops a workflow, it will be automatically deposited into the workflow hub, so others can take it and reuse it, and it will be in the form of an arrow crate with all the metadata and the provenance that comes with it. So that's the whole question that we had at the beginning, and we just try to reuse these workflows and prove that this can be really reused. This actually I learned while preparing this presentation. This use case is quite popular. It's linked in many of the different EOS nodes that are involved. I just wanted to highlight here the Life Science Connect. This is the one that EOIMG belongs to, where we have this particular example listed as an exemplary use case. Germany is also the one providing the infrastructure for Galaxy, and DataTerra is also collaborating with us on the environmental aspect. They also have some they're trying to reuse also what we do, and we try to get also the data to see if we can come up with reusable workflows with them. So coming back to the project, the main goal, knowing that we work in silos and that these tasks that we all want to do are at the beginning not interoperable or even discoverable. What we want to do is to develop these reusable image analysis workflows between these different scientific domains that I mentioned before. And also we want to embed the verification as part of this. And this means that we want our tools to be annotated so that people can know that's doing a particular image analysis task, but it should be understandable for all the domains. So it should be in a very agnostic way and not very domain specific. And the third point that is also quite important is to raise awareness about this, because many of these communities are not talking to each other. So we wanted to create this kind of single points of connection in which we share what kind of things we do with other disciplines and see if they also do something similar. Okay, so then a brief parenthesis here about the Galaxy platform, just in case people are not familiar with it. It's also listed on many of the EOS notes. The interface looks something like this. It's not exactly like this because it is a flavor that we have for imaging, but it's basically a web interface. You just need your browser to access to it. You can also do it programmatically if you don't like using the graphical user interface. So in this screenshot, you can see that there are different tools on the left. There is a list of operations that you can do, and then there will be more than 8,000 tools in total that are in there for all kinds of scientific areas. Then there's the central panel where you see now a welcome and introduction with tutorials and so on. But that's usually where all the activities happen. So whenever you need to interact with Galaxy and use a particular tool or run something, you will see everything in the central panel. And on the right side, there is a history where everything that is happening gets recorded with the provenance, that you get the full workflow pipeline that you are running, similar to would be in a lab notebook that you are writing down everything that you're doing, something like this on the right side that you can later export or share with others as well. So that's the Galaxy interface, and it's really broader than that. And I'm just giving a very short overview of this, but this is how a workflow looks like. So each one of these squares that you see in blue and white, these are the tools. So here I start with importing some data, and then we chain together different tools to do a particular thing. In this case, it's about object tracking. So some cells were dividing, and I wanted to track them over time in a kind of a movie. And so this is an example of how the workflow finally looks like when you have everything that you want to run together. And then you have some metadata on the right side that describes, for example, this one I created in 2021, and there is no license, and then there are tags. So you can annotate with a lot of metadata, which is also very useful for us if we want other disciplines to be able to use this, for example, describing very well what this workflow is doing for others. And one can also run from here. So on the top right, there is a run button, or can edit or download and so on. But one can run and they will see the transition of the running, how this is happening. It also manages metadata and the data inputs and the output can be also exported. So there are plenty of features here that I am not covering, but I just wanted to show how a workflow looks like, because this is the end result that we want to get from our project. And also a very nice feature of Galaxy is the Pulsar network, and this is totally transparent to us. So we know because we know, but it's not because as users we know. So this is the Pulsar node. You have different Pulsar nodes with compute in different parts of Europe, and you also see in Australia. So there would be compute available that is connected to the Central European Galaxy server. And that means that whenever we run this workflow, we need some compute capacity behind it, but we don't know, or in principle, it's transparent to the user where this is going to be run. And why it's run in one place or another, it depends on the capacity of the compute center that it's hosting this Pulsar node, or it might depend because it's closer to the data, or because it has several particularities like GPU or something else. So in that case, it would go to the particular cluster that it's in the network. So in that sense, it's a distributed compute that we are benefiting from as well here. Okay, so then I mentioned that in our case, this is quite tricky because we speak different languages, we do totally different things, but in the end, we do very similar things. So we look at the things that we actually do. So in my case, for the bioimaging community, it's more on identifying cells, organelles, while in astronomy, it's about galaxies or stars. In Earth observation, there's about forests or fields or lakes or this kind of water sources. For tracking, also, we usually do it for cells. So we follow cells that are doing something. However, in tracking, they also look at satellites or planes. And in the Earth observation, there's also something around deforestation. So if the coast is being eroded and it becomes smaller and smaller, or the ice is being melted. So all these kind of things are also tracked in the other sciences. Those were all very surprising discoveries to all of us because we're not familiar with the other sciences. We also have a lot of object counting. So whenever we have an image, this is usually information that we want to get on cells, stars, buildings, ships. We also have some examples of double segmentations. And what we mean here is that we identify an object, and then we may want to identify an object inside the object. So in our case, we have nucleolus inside the nucleus, so we want to find these holes. Supernovas also have similar structure. So this is something that we have also in common. And in general, final steps after identifying these objects or tracking them or counting is to extract features, so to measure the shape, the intensity of these objects, if they have something in particular in the texture. So it's in the end very diverse, but we boil down to the same things. And that's what we wanted to identify here, just by having this kind of breaking the silo and having this conversation between us. So we identified these different tasks. We try to use a common language. Instead of saying cell segmentation, we would say object segmentation, because we want the others also to understand. And we look at also the Galaxy Training Network, and this is a repository in which you will find plenty of training materials, tutorials that are step-by-step guided. You can find different categories for different scientific areas as well. So here we have one for imaging, and that's broader imaging, not just bioimaging. We want to have it for anybody that is using images in general for the research. And in this case, it's enriching bioimaging, just because people were doing this first. So we have 20 tutorials in total. What we are doing now, and based on putting in common this kind of image analysis tasks that we all do and we have in common, was to go through these tutorials and see if that could be applied to some other data. And each one of the communities would be searching for the data repositories that they usually consume, and try to see if a sample of those would work with this tutorial, so that we could have some kind of cross-disciplinarity here. So we have 3 at the moment for segmentation, for tracking, and also for AI models that I will show you in a second. I mentioned this already, but I also wanted to highlight that every time one develops a tutorial here, you put the sample data in Zenodo, and you also put the workflow automatically into the workflow hub, which is very nice for others to be able to reuse. Okay, so on this tutorial, we just wanted to have exemplary workflow with exemplary data, show that this can be run for the different disciplines whenever it makes sense to have the 3 of us or 2 of us, and then we'll be running in the same pipeline. Sometimes we change parameters a bit, but the workflow stays the same. So we are using the same tools, just in a different discipline. And it serves also as a first training if we want to deliver a training, but also kind of a documentation of what we are doing for the others, and also for potential other communities that may be able to use this. Okay, so this is the first example. We actually showcased this last year in the EOS Symposium. There is a video, I think it's the same one that Stefan mentioned in some slide before. So there is a link to the video on the top right of the screen. And this showcases this example, this Voronoi segmentation, that it's about identifying these objects in different images. You see in the first one, there are cells with a dark background, then we have trees and water, and then we have stars. So we use the same methods for the 3 different images. The tutorial is designed in a way that it's like a choose your own adventure. So at the beginning, you start with a very basic introduction that is common for the 3 use cases. But then, depending on the community that you're coming from, you choose one of the paths, and in the end, they all recombine into a final statement about what the tutorial was for. So I recommend that if you have some time, you have a look at these kind of tutorials because they are very well explained and step by step to have all this information very detailed. But also at the beginning of the tutorial, you get the link to the data sets, the workflows, and so on, and where in which galaxy you can run that because there are different instances. So there's a lot of information there. So now we are working on more cross-disciplinary workflows because that one was only about segmentation, but we wanted to try with something else. A recent test that we've been doing, it's about a bioimage model suite, that it's a repository for AI models that have been trained on bioimages. So you see in the window at the top that we have cells in there, and then there is the object is detected, so there is a segmentation mask, and then the boundaries. So that's a model that was totally trained on AI, on bioimages. And now we thought, okay, how about we try to just apply? We don't need to fine tune the model. We don't need to retrain or do anything fancy. We just want to reuse this model with an image with stars and another one with lakes. And it kind of works. I will talk about the complications of this as well. But in principle, they detect these objects as well because they are really not so different images. So that's the second test that we've been doing. We also looking at source extractor is a tool from astronomy that I never heard of, but it seems to be quite popular in that community. So we want to try to also use that in bioimages in my case to see if there is some kind of detection of light, as in a cell that it's kind of glowing or something like that. The tracking I already mentioned before. We have just an example of cells dividing, and then we follow the division of that cell over time. And our colleague from the Earth observation community also try now with atmospheric rivers, which is a new concept to me. I didn't know that thing exists, but it also can be applied with the object tracking because it's changing the shape and so on. So that's something that we are also playing with at the moment. And next thing that we want to try is from image reconstruction, because in particular for astronomy and for environmental science, there are many satellite images and they need to be stitched together because they overlap and to create like a bigger image of all of this. So that's what we are planning to do in the coming months. And I'm talking in present all the time because our project is finishing in March next year. So we still have some time to finish some of these activities, but that's the plan that we have at the moment and the current situation. So what we've learned and what were the challenges? So we have had a hard time identifying sources for the data because we don't know the data or where the other communities deposit the data, and we didn't want to go for very generic repositories like Zenodo, so we wanted to go to the domain-specific ones, and that's why we needed different experts from the different sites to provide this domain knowledge. We also had some conversation around the formats because each community has reached an agreement, or sometimes not even an agreement, about the file format that they want to use for images. And that's a bit tricky because we wanted to converge into SAR, that it's like cloud-ready format that it's chunked, so one can select only the part of the image that one wants and not the whole thing. But we realized that not many image analysis tools are ready to consume this type of data. So in the end, we had to compromise it and use TIFF because that was the format for the 3 different communities that was in common. In terms of analysis, I already mentioned the challenge on the common vocabularies. We really speak different languages, and it's a bit complicated sometimes to find what the others are doing in a totally different area. And that also makes difficult interoperability, because if we have a tool that we want other people to use and they are not in our community, we need to annotate that properly. We are using the EDAM ontology for these annotations, and there are different levels of adoptions by each community. And sometimes it grows into the domain-specific one, so there's no like a common ontology in which we could just annotate everything. So we're trying to now work on this as well, so that we have annotations that are generic enough. And a final challenge, it's the one that I wanted to mention with the AI models as well, is that we are at the moment in all tutorials, not just the AI ones, proving that the method works, that we can actually reuse more interpretability tests than the actual scientific output of this, because many of these solutions might not be the best, and there might be a reason why there are some domain-specific tools that work better for one community than for another. We just wanted to try and see if there are things that we didn't know exist in other disciplines that are totally suitable for our case, and see if that could be something that could help in our research. So the quality and the interpretation of results, we are not looking at the moment at that. We just want to make it work and see that this is a very good proof of concept, but we are not looking into the quality of these annotations. And so this is the team that is behind this Fiesta project. There is more people in the community that is working on this. I'm just talking about the ones that are under the Oscars Fiesta. We have Anne that is coming from LifeWatch, and Volodymyr and Matusz. All of them I met in different EOSC projects. It's a long journey of EOSC, different projects, and we met in different contexts, and now we are together in this one. We are working in the open, so all the information that we, all discussions and everything that we are talking about, we have on GitHub. So all our project management, everything is open there. And we also deposit our outputs in Zenodo, and that's all from my side. I also leave my email there just in case someone wants to know more about this or was to get in touch for some reason. I'll be happy to reply to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Without much ado, I suggest we jump to our next speaker, which is Tibor. Welcome. Thank you for being here. The screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So let's start with the second use case, which is federating CERN RIANA pipelines. So I work at CERN in the Department of Information Technology, developing tools for open science and working also as a node deputy coordinator. So what is RIANA? It's a platform we build in order to promote open and reproducible and reusable science. So core philosophy is basically two things we try to pay attention to. We should offer a platform, containerized platform for researchers to very easily run and organize their declarative scientific workflows. And we should support whatever technology or popular workflow user habits are there in the community. So RIANA is actually supporting several compute backends like Kubernetes, htCondor for high throughput computing, or Slarm for high performance computing. And one maybe particularity is the support for multiple workflow languages. Common workflow language, Dask, sequential workflows, SnakeMake or Yedich, yet another directive, basically graph engine developed kind of on physics, and physicists or researchers can use a command line or web interface in order to submit their workflows. So to understand the use case, let me show you the original problem domain, what we try to develop RIANA for, and it's exactly to facilitate searches for new physics beyond the standard model. You might know that standard model of particle physics developed in the last century, 1970s, is very well describing the nature, but we know that there are some missing blocks. It cannot be the definite answer. So what the LHC, Large Hadron Collider, is doing, providing collision beams for the experiments such as ATLAS, CMS, ALICE, LHCb, who are looking into what could be the ultimate kind of theory. So, and one of the trouble is the graph on the left is showing PMSSM, so it's a phenomenological minimal supersymmetry model. It's having something like 19 parameters. So as a researcher, you would like to, like very variables over 19-dimensional space. So you have to launch a large number of workflows. The workflow is very easy. It's explained in the graph above. So it is maybe only like 8 steps, but you would like to launch really thousands of them in order to arrive at one publication. And this is what RIANA does. It organizes workflow runs for the scientist. And the idea is to basically look for physics beyond the standard model. So graph on the right is showing, for example, supersymmetry models before the reanalyzing of all the experiments. So we are looking at which supersymmetry model, if supersymmetry is there, whether it could be or not could be matching the experimental results. So the typical experimental particle physics data analysis looks like this. The green chain up there, it's the nature, what nature gives us. So there is a real experimental collisions depending on the detector, giving us a lot of collisions per second, out of which the interesting ones are triggered, filtered, and reconstruction. So basically movement of particles coming out of protons are reconstructed based on the detectors. And this is what the nature gives us. And the blue chain below, it's a theoretical one. Basically, based on the standard model of particle physics, we can try to predict by simulating if this theory is true, what we should observe in the detector based on the status of the detector, energy of particles. And then after all these data are reprocessed, we have something like analysis ready data, which the individual physicists can statistically analyze in order to see whether the theory predicts what is observed in reality or whether we have some excess signal which could signify discovery. So this was to show that to do the experimental particle physics analysis, we are analyzing basically collision data, which are taken from the nature, and simulated data taken from the models. And this is an example that you can actually run at home. We are providing a lot of open data from particle physics collisions, but from all the LHC experiments, like CMS is offering more than 5 petabytes of data. One of the examples is shown on the left, collision data from 2012, simulated data from 2012, and all the auxiliary information, such as which runs are validated to be good for physics analysis. So all this data is coming from the CERN Open Data Portal, freely available. And on the right, if you would like to analyze it, the software necessary to analyze the particles out of the recorded data set, it's usually containerized. So we have a nice container corresponding to the status of CMS 2012 software. So people can write code, which is like a C++ macros. From the container, we launch the analysis. So there is a process, analyze data in the blue, analyze Monte Carlo, which is simulated data sets in the yellow. And finally, we can merge the two, make a plot. And this is basically what is observed. So you can see in the kind of cyan color, there's a little bit excess around 195 gigaelectron volt. And this is basically the mass of the Higgs boson. This picture was used in 2012 for the announcement of the Higgs boson discovery. And in a simplified version, you can basically run it at home. It's CMS open data analysis Higgs 2 4-lepton model. So our use case was, can we actually do it on the European Open Science Cloud Federation? So as a researcher, I would like to start something on my laptop. I would like to run an analysis workload on some node. And let's assume that collision data is hosted at CERN. It could be many terabytes, even petabytes. So I would not like to transfer the data, but I would like to bring computations where the data is. And then I would do the simulations in another node where the data is or where I have compute resources. And then at the end, merge it and do it together with plots. One example on the right is showing why this matters. So this is a simulated experiment analyzing CMS software, some AOD, nano AOD processing. So data was sitting at CERN, and the Catilla Selaperini, the physicist doing these tests, was using public cloud like Google Cloud Platform and running computations in Zurich, in Netherlands, in Finland, and basically in US, and then in Brazil, and measuring how fast the jobs can be finished. So when the job is very close to data, 20 minutes, it's very good. But even when you go to kind of Finland, it's already more than 40 minutes. And if you go to US, it's much, much larger. So this is why it matters. And near data computing in physics, it's not new or astronomy. It's a discipline that is there since a long time. What we try to do is to actually bring it to standard declarative workflow languages. So the use case addresses two federating computing needs. As a scientist, I would like to send my workflow But if my job requires certain data, whether they are sitting on this node or that node, I would like these jobs to be automatically transferred to the nodes where the data sits for processing. So this is the principle of near data computing. And second use case, which is stemming out of it, is actually offer some compute over closed data. So external collaborators like theorists, they don't have access to collaboration data, experimental, but they might like to test some new theories. And there is a very nice example called Atlas Recast. So one of the things we are looking for, not only physics beyond standard model, but for example, what is the nature of dark matter? We know that universe is more heavy than is observable, so there must be a certain mass which is dark because it's very hard to observe. And theorists came up with an idea that actually dark matter could be produced in the Atlas experiment by a new Higgs particle family, which is something that was dubbed dark Higgs. So they formulated this model, but they don't have access to experimental data. Atlas, they did some searches for dark matter before without the hypothesis of the dark Higgs. And what they could actually do, it's very expensive to run an experimental analysis from scratch, design everything. It's basically years of work, but they could actually repurpose the original analysis to test the new theory. So the theoretical physicists were predicting some signal. So where this could lead to is offering service to theorists to run compute over data they don't have access to. And this is the purpose of Atlas Recast. So the target user group is researchers who are writing their computational analysis workflows using tools like Common Workflow Language or SnakeMake or Yedich, which is basically very similar over many other scientific disciplines, not only particle physics. Or it could be infrastructures who would like to offer some compute capabilities. One possible example, that there is a national node which is having a lot of CPU cores, and maybe they would like to offer compute cores to the theorists in the given nation, and combining the compute resources in one node with the compute resources to where the data is could be a way to actually make the research faster and simpler for the researchers. So the use case was done during the EOSC Federation build-up phase last year. Participation was basically EOSC CER node, EOSC EU node, and we've been having national nodes from Finland, Italy, Poland, and Netherlands. So for the collaboration, what is required mostly was technical coordination. You can picture every EOSC node is having different cloud solutions. That's why we have a federation. And how do we actually federate these compute resources? So we chose for this use case to do pure Kubernetes containerized workloads with a project called MultiQ, which is like a batch scheduler for Kubernetes, which allows it workloads to be dispatched to different collaborating Kubernetes clouds. This is how it looks like. So on the left-hand side, the Higgs-to-4 lepton analysis I presented before. As a researcher, you write the kind of SnakeMake. If you know SnakeMake, you might see the snake file on the left. There is a resource hint. For example, for analyzing Monte Carlo, there is a resource hint. It should go to Q for Surf Netherlands. And in the analyzing of the collision data, it should go to Q in Finland. And then Rihanna was taking care of dispatching these calculations, aggregating all the logs, and presenting the results back to the researcher. So the core idea here is, as a researcher, you just write workflow hint. I would like this computation to go to this node, and then everything is taken care of you. Nothing to do over what you have been used to using locally. As far as the implementation went, which federating capabilities we have taken into account. So one of the core one is the FC1 AAI, because we have to actually authenticate users and act on behalf of users. So one Kubernetes cluster in a node 1, is it allowed or not to dispatch jobs to cluster node 2 on behalf of a user? That's the primary story. Then there is FC4 for service monitoring, because maybe the other Kubernetes cluster on the remote node is down and we cannot dispatch job there. So we have to make sure that the clusters are up and available to serve workloads. FC6 service accounting. So in EOSC node, if you have tried, you have certain user quota. How do we make sure that if you have a certain quota on one node and certain quota in another node, quotas are maybe not federated yet? That's a problem that needs to be solved. And finally, FC9, which was the core of the work, execute containerization of payloads across collaborating sites. So this was the prototype demonstrator during the build-up phase, which was developed. And the other ones, we are still continuing to work on improving the services. So as far as the monitoring of success criteria, there are basically two. As a researcher, I want to run my analysis wherever node I have access to just by providing simple hints. And as an infrastructure provider, I would like to expose my actually CPU or GPU resources to collaborating nodes to simplify work for user payloads and obviously monitor what they do. So the example demonstrator is up there. You can actually use it yourself. And what we developed is very generic, so it can be plugged into CWL or SnakeMake. We have example of RIANA usage in astronomy, collaboration with life sciences and other disciplines. Final slide about the challenges and lessons learned. For us, the challenges are mostly technical. It was a relatively limited use case with 5-6 EOSC nodes. One possible important consideration is how to prevent potentially unsafe computing payloads, how to make sure that what we are accepting from remote sites is good, not to allow somebody, misuse the system by trying to mine bitcoins or whatever. So security is a big important aspect in here. And what we are trying to do right now and in the next years is to simplify the prototype or the demonstrator even more so that the propagation of produced data, which was now done by a combination of data streaming and Kubernetes services, we would offer a robust data management solutions such as Ruchio, which can propagate workload workspaces the user needs amongst various EOSC nodes. And maybe one final interesting observation, a similar project which is kind of spawning up connected to EOSC Gravity, Forge, federating open research data for genomics on EOSC using the same technology started in parallel between CERNode and EOSNode Italy, facilitated by Area Science Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was most interesting, Tibor. In keeping with our process, I would say we jump right to our next and last speaker, not least, but last speaker for today, which is Sarah. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Stefan. Okay. Okay, you can see it properly, yes. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Pittonet. I'm Senior Manager at Trust IT Services, and here today I represent I'm here to talk to you about the use case that is brought by the nascent EOSC node, European Digital Twin Ocean. So today we're going to talk about biological sequestration of carbon in the ocean, because the use case we built is working to build a pipeline of workflow, in support of the analysis of ocean biological carbon sequestration. So where did we start? So let me give you the context. As we've already seen, all these use cases encompass very different domains and disciplines. So today here we tackle biology, biogeochemistry, and physical oceanography. So the ocean microbiome is a diverse microscopic community. So it includes all the viruses, bacteria, unicellular protists, invertebrates, and it's fundamental. It plays a really great role in the global biochemical cycles and processes, and including the sequestration of atmospheric carbon in the ocean. So modeling the ocean biological carbon sequestration requires a comprehensive knowledge of the biodiversity of microbiomes and the biogeography and the metabolic and the biogeochemical function. So across decadal scales. The molecular data generated are generated at an exponential rate and can offer an unprecedented amount of information about ocean microbiomes, taxonomy, and functional diversity, but they are still vastly underexploited by the current models. So that was the challenge. What is the expected output that the use case is trying to reach? So we're trying to build a cloud-based platform that will combine fair and harmonized molecular data from a specific database, the International Nucleotide Sequence Database Collaboration, state-of-the-art bioinformatics pipelines that can transform the molecular data into taxonomic and functional observations or occurrences. And then fair and harmonized environmental climatologies from mainly Copernicus and NOAA's. And then state-of-the-art global distribution models that use the biodiversity occurrences and the environmental climatologies data to map the carbon sequestration in a future scenario. Oops. So this service helps to demonstrate that by linking services that are currently available in different nodes, we can make ecological modeling more robust and carbon cycle assessment more robust. So the aim is again to work on a service that can serve as a blueprint for cross-domain thematic data integration, in this particular case, in support of ocean health monitoring and climate-related decision-making. So the nodes had an history, of course. So as we'll see, this use case is the result of a collaboration between the EOSC node European Digital Twin Ocean, which is one of the first 13 nodes selected, and running in the EOSC Federation, that started back in history years ago under the umbrella of the Blue Cloud project. But then the other nodes that offers the data in this case is the EOSC node Life Sciences. But then in the work that we are doing, and I'm talking also in present tense, but in future tense, and then I'll explain you why, could also foresee synergies with other nodes. One is the Polish missional node, or another example is the French Data Terra node. So this collaboration, as of today, is organized under the remit of the EOSC Marine project, which has been very recently granted and will start on 1st of September. So thanks to this funding, we have managed to secure resources till 2029 to allow to different communities working, coming from these two different nodes, joint efforts under this use case. So the partners driving the use cases are EMBL in the I, ETHZ in Switzerland, and EMBRC, Eric. But then all of this is shaped within the IT infrastructure of the node, which is coordinated by CNR and run by CNR. But there are a number of partners and contributing organizations that are either contributing to the IT infrastructure that is being integrated into the EOSC Federation, or to the other thematic services that are being built within the node and that will serve as thematic services for the marine and ocean community. So I mentioned before the two nodes, so the Digital Twin of Ocean and the EOSC node Life Science. So here you see both the key partners involved, but also the technologies and services that are being used. So the EOSC node Digital Twin Ocean is basically offering the modeling side by introducing the workbench approach, this workbench pipeline that has been first developed as part of Blue Cloud and that will be now evolved into this other modeling case, while the life science community is bringing, in addition to technologies, including Galaxy Magnify, the microbiome data sources. Sorry, I wasn't expecting animations, so I didn't check this properly. Okay, so two components will be established. On one side, the knowledge-based service. So EMBL and EMBRC are working to provide global observation of marine microbiome diversity, taxonomy, and function based on biomolecular genetic data collected over the last 25 years. They are already available in some archives like the European Nucleotide Archives. And the taxonomic and functional analysis of this data will be generated by Magnify and Ensemble services powered within by the Galaxy platform and by Elixir and within EMBL. On the other side, so once the knowledge base has been set up for this specific microbiota data, the modeling service will run. The leader is ETHZ. That we work to upgrade an existing service available in the EOSC node DTO, EOSC node European DTO, which is the workbench that now is working on ecosystem data based on plankton, but that will evolve basically to derive new spatio-temporal distribution and macro ecological function on marine microbiome specific relationships. And this will be done exactly to analyze and model the knowledge provided by the EOSC Life Science node. This pipeline will enable different type of stakeholders to assess the impact of environmental change in both the marine biological carbon pump and in other ecosystem functions. Sorry, there is another. So in the life science node, there is also another technology called Beacon that is used to establish the knowledge-based service as a broker, mainly. So what is the use of the federated capability that have been made? So in addition to the services, the thematic services that the two nodes are offering, of course, the node operates in a technical infrastructure, a virtual research environment, and this environment is integrated already with the EOSC Federation for the production phase. So it is registered within the Federation and is ready to start. Among the federated capabilities implemented, there is the resource catalog. So all the thematic services, data discovery tools are federated within the EOSU node catalog. So this ensures that these marine specific resources are findable from a central EOSC entry point. And on the other side, federated AI is in place. So the node has already moved into a federated authentication model. It's still working, it's not a unique node. This is a process that the Federation is implemented, but work is still to be done to ensure seamless AI across the different federated environments and nodes and varies. So if we look at some challenges, they all, let's say, relate to these aspects. So how to still improve on both sides, mainly from a federation, AAI facilities. So there are aspects that relate to the transit to programmatic access, for instance. So far, the users are still web-based managed since they have to accept policies, or the need for token exchange mechanisms, or the linking authentication flows across identities, or again standards and open IDs, to ensure credentials are monitored. But again, these are challenges that are being addressed at the federation level. How we will monitor this? So as we said, this is a work in progress. And what we did basically is we introduced this pipeline as one of the key results of the EOSC Marine project. The ocean biological carbon sequestration pipeline is embedded as a node thematic services, which means that by the end of the project, we have a KPI, I mean, and the objectives is to make it operational with a TRL up to 8 or 9. This will be our way to monitor that this is fully operational. And this also will be fully integrated with the end-to-end workflows. We have some deliverables down that will help us monitor that this really happen. So we will have a user manual, then of course documentation providing, and we're also mapping these services with respect to the relevance of them as recommended by the Federation. All of this is part of also a broader program, because the European node DTO, while being one of the key nodes of the Federation, is also acts also as a bridge with the European Digital Twin Ocean program run by DG Mare and the European Commission, and in particularly is ensuring interoperability with EDITO, which is the public infrastructure supporting the European Digital Twin of the Ocean program. So if you look at the lessons learned, I mean, all the cases that have been presented so far tell stories of communities that have found themselves and have met and have worked on similar challenges to maximize the efforts. We are one of those, and we bridge, I mean, in particularly with the work of the broader marine communities. So we are first and foremost a community of users, and that's the specific need that we are trying to solve with this use case.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much to all presenters. In fact, as promised towards the beginning, we'll now move into our Q&A session. And you should feel free, I think, to just use the microphone. Raise your hand first, please, so that we can keep an overview, if there's something of an overview. And if you don't wish to speak, you should also feel free to use the chat, of course.
Exactly. So we have the first question in the chat. If we can ask you. So the question is to all presenters from Irena. She's asking, what licenses will you put on your workflow pipelines? Where will this be documented?
So maybe we could start with Beatrice, since...
Yes, I partially mentioned this in my presentation. So we have tutorials that we are using as documentation for the different workflows. They are linking there, but they are also deposited in the workflow hub. We go for the most permissive license, but we're also not dealing with any type of sensitive data or commercial tools. So it's all open source and open science. So in our case, it's the most permissive one.
Thank you. Tiba?
Yeah, in case of Rihanna, so we are basically respecting whatever license researchers put on their code. Rihanna is like executor, we execute, but we don't push workflow if the researcher does not want. If a researcher would like to publish it somewhere, it's published with the license of the researcher. And Rihanna as a software itself is using MIT, so it's basically free open source, installable anywhere.
Yeah, I would say the same. So in this case, the pipelines will be developed collaboratively within the virtual research environment. But as it is now for the current workbench, it is accessible and available. There is documentation. There is already a handbook for this one. So there will be another one specific for the macrobiome use case. And license, I mean, it will be under open science. So I need to check honestly, also because it's being built, but it will be open. And again, we're not dealing with sensitive data either. But we can send you some links to the current one if you can also try and navigate the current workbench.
Thank you very much. The next question, also via the chat, is from Victoria. And it goes out to Beatrice. In the first use case, you showed Galaxy.eu. That is a fairly mature service. What is the estimated cost? workload and time for integrating this service in the EOSC Federation? And then there's a second question. Can you explain difficulties in integrating it?
So if it's about integrating the Galaxy server into the EOSC Federation, I cannot answer this question. I don't know how this is made. If it's about we using these services or how we, as a use case, are participating in the federation, so in that case, this I can take, and this is more as using Galaxy and all that comes with the ecosystem. So we chose it also in part because we had users in it, but also because we had this connection with other parts of the ecosystem. I don't know, Victoria, is it answering your question or was it something else that you wanted to?
No, it's other thing that I want to ask you, because if you have a services, I want to know how much difficult is integrated with the federation. Is very difficult, or it's just matter of API, and I think it depends of the services and as well the how you want to integrate into the federation. It's more about it.
Yeah, but I am not the infrastructure provider or the service provider, so I really cannot answer this question. Sorry.
Tibor, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, maybe I can comment quickly on it. I was in touch
Okay.
also with Bjorn about the Galaxy integration. So for the federated AAI, it's actually relatively easy because my access ID is following like a key cloak standard. So in our case, it was basically configure secrets, talk to key cloak as a provider, and have some basically way to filter which users have or which users have not access to the service. The standards are really nicely documented for AAI, and it was relatively low effort, basically, just this part. And for Galaxy, it was relatively similar. I remember just the AAI was just to configure one of the endpoints. And there were also obviously other work like making Galaxy deployable on new node, which is a little bit more, but effort was moderate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have next question to all three. Very impressive. Can you elaborate on effort needed to make this happen, both on the elapsed time and possibly actual? It's Roberto. So Roberto, if you want to also take a floor, then please.
Yes, because yeah, they are very impressive use cases, right? And I'm just puzzled, wondering how long does it take to go from the idea of this use case to actually deploying it? What type of effort is needed, both in terms of did it span many months to get from the idea to the deployment, and did you have how many people working on them to make them happen? That's the question I'm asking here. Is it too hard?
Maybe I'll take it, but I mean, I can say 2 years. I mean, of course, you don't wake up a morning and define this. I mean, you need collaboration over years. So actually, we also have some numbers because we are releasing a sustainability plan. So I could give you some figures that the colleagues from this specific activity, I mean, the one that is running now, are releasing, but the amount of effort needed is not just for deployment, because then there is a effort for I mean, supporting and help desk, because when you develop this, of course, so there is always a dialogue between the scientist part and the technicians, and this must continue also when this is into production. Then for the development and incorporating new data types, there is another type of effort from another type of skills. I mean, researchers versus data scientists who integrate services with the magnified or so. It's not, I cannot give you a number, but yeah, it requires
a lot, you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
A
the
lot.
reason I'm asking at least is that we have to come up with a number of use cases in our charter, and it's an unknown entity. What does this mean, right? In terms of where do we start, where do we finish? It's quite opaque. And what I'm seeing here is really three impressive that I got a lot of background knowledge to support those use cases, right? Background science and knowledge that has been that have been crucial in being able to design these use cases, and then a lot of expertise required to deploy them. So it sounds like it's a very challenging task to come up with these use cases for us in these charter projects.
Tibor, would you like to add?
Yeah, maybe I can add a few numbers. So we started last year, real work started around planning like April, let's say, but the real work started end of June and presentation was by October. So let's say half a year. And we started with something we are already doing for physics. So the idea was to open it up for non-physics communities or for theorists that don't have access to CERN. So starting from a relatively well-established platform is easier. There was, for example, to give you an idea for dispatching workflows by using multi-queue, that was completely new development. It was about 10,000 lines of code. Several people from my team were working on it, but I would say kind of like half an FTE maybe. And then we've been having deployments on various sites for the demonstrator. So contact with several persons, typically like 10 people, let's say, in a work group working for this half a year. But deployment is relatively easy. So overall, since this is something we wanted to do anyway, planning was already there. We just kind of go and went for the implementation. So relatively constrained effort. Like in total, 1 FT maybe and a bit, including everything. Thanks to the EOSC Federation using nice standards like my Access ID and Keycloak, OpenID, OIDC tokens, it's relatively straightforward to start up.
Thank you. Beatrice?
Yes, I can also give you a few numbers because in our case, it's a very concrete project that is funded for 2 years and it's 250K. This is roughly less than 20 person months, more or less. However, this is a bit unfair to say that it's that cheap because we are using here free infrastructure. We're not taking care of the service of running the servers or doing any of the, taking care of the compute, the storage, any of this. So we just use it because it's a free infrastructure. So it's just the scientific part what we are bringing here with this project, right? So it's not totally accurate what I can say. In terms of the preparation and how this was born, I cannot recall when we start because I think these ideas start very early on when you have some informal conversation with someone and at some point we thought we should apply to something, we should do something together, but there was never a call for us to apply as a cross-disciplinary team because this is not very easy to find. And so the Oscars project brought this opportunity and we tried, but it's quite difficult to find this kind of opportunities and we would be just discussing it and it would be nice to do, but we would never find the moment and now it was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 2 more questions in the chat, but we only have 2 minutes, so I'll be very quick and maybe you can be brief in your responses this time. So maybe that we can take both of these questions. So Imad is asking what happens to scientific workflows and data when project funding ends? Is long-term sustainability sufficiently addressed? Beatrice.
Yes, this is something that I also wanted to add to my previous reply to Roberto, because also one of the requirements that we have when we apply to the Oscars project was to be connected to other RIs that could sustain the project later on or connected to other projects, because obviously the funding was not enough to carry on for a long time to sustain the services after. So we are relying here on community driven. So I showed the Galaxy Training Network and so on. So we are relying on these services, but we're also looking at funding that we could get partially from different projects so that we can sustain that. So sustainability is always a big topic. It's tricky to sustain things things, but we rely on many of these things. And at the moment, even the collaborations that we have in the project are many times in kind. So someone will look at a tutorial, would review it, if that makes sense for them or not, and they are not part of the project or paid to do that. So it's a lot of in-kind contributions anyway. So we hope that we will maintain this in the different open source repositories, but the long-term sustainability, it's always a struggle for everybody.
Yeah, so for CERN, the CERN management, it has a very proactive open science, open data position. So all the experimental data from the collaborations are released to public after a certain embargo period, after verification publication, and after 10 years, I think the data is fully available to anyone. So we have in place process of actually making data long-term archived and reusable, and that's where Rihanna comes in. The data comes with example. For example, we try to periodically run them to make sure that all the recipes are still active and something does not break as a function of time. So for the particle physics itself, we take it seriously, so the data will be reusable, because otherwise it would be extremely prohibitive to rebuild a new collider and take the data in the future again.
Thank you. Sarah? I see you already responded in the chat. Would you like to speak up still?
No, well, actually gave some numbers on the efforts that the previous speaker was asking. Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was typing. I got distracted.
It's about long-term sustainability.
Yeah, so this is very much related to, well, so it has sense. So very much related to the sustainability of the infrastructure. So in our case, the infrastructure is sustainable per se because it's provided by long-term research entity, mainly CNR in Italy, is providing the technology and the virtual research environment, supported by others for the technical support. I mean, the sustainability then depend, of course, there is a sustainability of the actual services. For some of them, those that turned into products or TRL8 or more service type, the sustainability plan, so all the thematic services should be transferred within the Edito platform, which being a public funded infrastructure platform run by the Commission, I mean, should offer also, I mean, it's always the entity responsible for the service that offers, let's say, the support, let's say, but the actual maintenance and accessibility of the service is ensured by the accessibility and availability also on Edito. So the services were already, we have some already that are already available or on Copernicus or on Edito itself. Then there's, of course, another type of sustainability that relates to the help desk and to that types of support that, in our case, can be there also thanks to the EOSC Marine project.
Thank you. Can we ask one last question? I think.
Yes, I would say so. I think this is.
It should be
Yes.
short. It's Jill's questions. Is there an expectation about the size of the community served by a given use case?
And I think that goes out to all the speakers, perhaps.
I think so.
Well, yeah, not one specific one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can take the question. So for us, we are looking at two use cases. One is enable theorists to have independent research on top of open data that we are publishing. So there is, I think if I guesstimate, it could be about 20,000 theoretical physicists or particle physicists around the world. But we are aiming also at education and education and outreach. So a lot of the examples are used by high school teachers and students to learn about particle physics, or university, undergrad projects. And this will be the first time that CERN will be offering actually compute to somebody who is not associated in any way to CERN. So just to give you an example, when we are doing open data releases several years ago, for one of such a big CMS open data release, we measured in a few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks after the announcement, about 70, 80,000 people connected just to see, visualize events and see what it is about. But only maybe about 2,000 or 3,000 really went deeply into the data, try to discover something. So we try to reach both these 2,000 who would be very much interested in doing some research, but also these 70,000 who might just want to have a look and learn a little bit about the particle physics. Rough guesstimate.
Okay.
Sarah?
No, in our case, the community is less. So the aim we have for, let's say, reaching out users who are interested in generic essential ocean variable services, because the use case we presented is one of 4 that will be further developed, is of the size of 1,000. So the current virtual research environment host 3,000 users, so we want to increase this, but we're more specific, let's say, for the modeling activity. Then, of course, when the pipelines are released and the data used, they can enter can be used for other applications, even societal or industrial ones, and that's a different type of activities. But for the community of collaborative researchers working on the models, we target a smaller group.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in our case, it's also quite difficult to track any of these things. We are 3 diverse communities. It's complicated, and at this stage, we are 1 year and a half from the beginning of the project, so we haven't measured any of the impact like this, and that's something that we need to do. Like what Tibor said, these numbers and these estimations, that's something that we should do as well. What we can measure at the moment is the people that follow tutorials, the number of downloads of the different workflows, these kind of things we can measure, but the size of the community, it's pretty hard. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The time is progressing. We are already a few minutes past what we had indicated as the end time for this course. So I think we can close here. And I would thank all of you, especially our 4 presenters, very much. It has been very impressive what you showed today. Thanks to everyone who participated. Thanks for a very lively discussion, and last but not least, thanks to the organizers.
So we would like to ask you to kindly to provide us with the feedback, so next time we can obviously improve our the organization of the online session. And obviously, if you have any further questions, you all have contacts now to our guest speakers, also to us, and we are very welcoming your contributions, so we can move further on with the development of this course.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Very
much.
interesting. And many thanks, Natalia and Stefan.